Well, I am, and when this tells me it's time.
Oh, I've got my teeth on.
Okay, I'm going to call the Richland County meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. And was there proof of notification?
We were posted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a 20-point agenda. We're going to scratch item number 10. We're not quite ready to discuss the deficiency appropriation report and resolution. So I'll entertain a motion to entertain a 19-point agenda. Mr. Manning? Seconded by that guy down there, Mr. Cooey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We have an agenda. Public comment, any comments, public? Or anyone can be a public now. Please grab a mic, otherwise we won't.
You're not talking to the people online, can't hear you.
Okay. My name is Lacey Subronic, and I'm here to speak on point number 9 about your health insurance.
Okay. Well, did you want to make a comment on it at this time, or?
If she can, yeah, just sit down, talk right into the mic.
Your county
Pull it closer. I'm sorry, they just aren't gonna hear you.
Your county employees were given a list of 19 insurance companies to choose from for this calendar year. So your employees had to go through 19 insurance companies to figure out who was covered and who was not. We chose what we thought was the best option for our family. I spent 7.5 hours calling different insurance companies to find out who covered our provider in Richland Center. We only house one hospital and one clinic. Sorry. On February 24th, I got a statement from GHC, which is the insurance company that I chose. Doing my due diligence, I called them to find out if my provider was covered, to which the answer was yes. So that's the policy we went with.
And Lacey, what provider were you talking about in particular?
GHC is the insurance company. The provider is our hospital.
Yes,
The
okay.
one and only hospital and clinic.
Yes, yes. Oh, I thought that was vital to know.
So on February 24th, I got my first statement from GHC telling me my provider was out of network. I called them and spent a good hour on
That's after you'd received care, I imagine.
after I'd received care
Uh-huh.
to find out my provider wasn't covered. And usually, a lot of the time, after you meet your out of network deductible, they will provide and cover your care. However, GHC does not offer that option. I went in for a scheduled doctor's appointment on February 27th to find out my appointments and my children's appointments have been canceled because I don't have coverage here. After doing my due diligence and calling.
Who canceled the appointments? The
clinic
provider?
did because GHC would
Yes.
not cover anything.
Got it.
After spending a large quantity of my day that Monday in the hospital with one of their representatives, we sat on the phone together and conference called GHC. Do you know the only way the clinic employees are supposed to know that GHC isn't covered is because employees who have an employer and have their insurance through an employer get a card. They cover Medicaid patients at our hospital, but they don't cover employees. How are hospital employees supposed to know that if you walk in with a card, your insurance isn't covered? That's not fair on them. So I've spent a large quantity of time and energy and effort trying to do the best for my 6 kids, my husband and I, to make sure we have good quality of care. I do not want to have to leave my doctor because somebody else didn't do their job and say, these are your 19 options that legally we have to present you. However, here's a list of who is actually covered. Somebody deserves something. Somebody didn't do their job. I'm sorry, they didn't. that should not fall on the employees or their spouse or their children to make phone calls and find out, do I get the doctor at the same place? Do I have to drive an hour to have a baby, to have a yearly exam, to do anything because I can't go to my doctor? Our employees need to stay in we are a poor county. How many of your employees are now going to have to go choose a different provider, which will cause our providers in town to have to lessen their staff because people who live here can't doctor here? It's very frustrating. However, I did get a phone call today and through all of the work done by the hospital, and I did receive an email that said the hospital employee gave the correct information to the employee's spouse. It was not a hospital employee that gave me the information that our insurance was covered. It was the insurance company themselves. And if the employee for the county knew that that wasn't even an open option, an amendment could have been made to the list given to the county employee stating, this insurance company isn't covered. This is the lovely 19 insurance companies that we got. This is the only sheet that they got that listed every company. Did anybody take the time to go through these 19 companies to figure out who covers our physicians? Obviously not, because you could have added an amendment saying these are the providers that you can take your insurance through that will cover our providers. In the one hospital, in the one clinic, we aren't Iowa County, we aren't Grant County where you have multiple options. This was a poor decision on whoever thought this was a good idea to make this the only information. We did get a few packets, but even some of those packets weren't accurate. So shame on whoever did this. However, the only good news I got a phone call personally from one of the directors of GHC informing me that they had come to a contractual agreement with our hospital and we are now covered. But as staff members, one of your staff should not, one of your employees of the county, this was not their responsibility. This was not my responsibility, but I want to make sure my babies are taken care of. I want to make sure the doctors they've seen since they were born in the hospital that they were born in can continue to care for them. I want to make sure if I have to go in and have a procedure done, I can go to the same person I've been seeing since 2008, knowing I'm getting quality care. Shame on all of you. Every single person sitting in this room that none of you thought, well, let's make it just a little bit easier. The policy that we wanted to choose is $14,004.60 a year. That is the portion your employees pay if they wanted to stay with the same company we already had. Did you know on this list there are 3 courts offerings? Only one of them covers our hospital. So they very easily could have thought courts, great, that's what we already have. Only 2 of them don't cover our hospital. And who would know that if you didn't call and ask? There are 2 dean policies on here. Only one of them covers our hospital, but you wouldn't know which one unless you call and you ask. This is the list given to me by the hospital when I spent my day there. Some of the acronyms on this sheet aren't the same acronyms on this sheet, but they're the same company. What can you do better to make sure this doesn't happen next year or the year after? How many of your employees that chose a courts policy or a dean policy are going to come to find out, by the way, I'm sorry, you're scheduled for an appointment today, but we don't accept your insurance?
You know what? I apologize on our behalf. I guess maybe you should have been in charge of the insurance transition.
I don't want to be in charge of the insurance transition.
Well, you ended up in
I'm able
charge.
to deal with enough of this for work. And
I
this
know.
is, a lot of people have asked me why my husband did not come to speak tonight. This is my wheelhouse. I work in healthcare. So I knew what questions to ask. And I was very specific when I spoke to GHC and knew everything I needed to ask and did my due diligence. I should not have had to do that.
Right.
You have a person who this should be their job, or at least part of it. I don't expect all of you to be able to look at this list and say, well, they're not covered here. Somebody could have taken the time and the effort and the energy to make it just a little bit easier I would have loved to gone with the same courts plan that I had. However, on what county employees make, spending $14,000 is not justifiable. So we went and we looked. We even picked the more expensive option out of the two we were going to pick because I wanted to stay with my providers. I wanted to keep clinic employees employed because if you have 500 or 600 employees and their families that no longer can doctor here, that's 500 or 600 patients that can no longer.
Did you, in your conversation, did you say that now GHC has reached an accord with Richland Hospital?
Yes, I did.
Probably due to you, thanks to you. So thank you for that. That came to our attention after the die was cast. And we didn't realize that, of course, that GHC wasn't going to be covered on the last option there, that people, actually the best price option for people to choose. And we didn't know that at the time we voted. I apologize for that. This kind of underscores a personal belief of my own, and maybe when I get off the county board, I will work to find a solution, and that is this country needs national health care or a single payer system, because it would eliminate all of this kind of craziness, all of the acronyms that you talked about, all the people. How many people are involved every day trying to figure out options? So there's a lot of fat in that system. So I thank you for bringing this to our attention. We deserve to be scolded, and we're sorry.
It's not your fault, but.
Oh, yeah, it is, in a way.
Well, it needs to be fixed. Next year, I do not want this to have to be an issue. I don't want a list of 19 options. None of us want a list of 19 options. You have to give us the list the state offers. I understand how that works. However, you could add an amendment saying, these are the ones that cover this hospital.
Right. Make sure the options are explained, what they
Yes.
cover. Yep, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd best move along, but I appreciate it. Previous minutes, have you looked at those? And if I don't hear anyone who wants to correct those minutes or make any additions, I'm going to declare them approved as published. And that brings us down to reports. I know Clint has been at the Wisconsin Counties Association Spring Conference, and possibly he can tell us what happened there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll see a spreadsheet, I'm sorry, not a spreadsheet, but a summary sheet that's presented to you on item 06 in your folder. It's also on the internet. Looking today potentially for a motion to accept the report. The Spring Legislative Conference was held in Madison. It was through the 27th through the 1st. There was a variety of different political, budgetary, and legal issues that was brought to our attention. Pretty good turnout this year. A lot of different chairmen from the boards, executives, and administrators were there, as well as some counties did have department heads. The most interesting aspect that I kind of took away from it, or at least an interesting thing that continues to resurface, is an initiative called Uniquely Wisconsin. Washington County Executive Josh Shulman, again promoted Uniquely Wisconsin. It's been out there for about 2 years. It is a kind of a platform and a branding station that helps with advertising and making videos on your county. Uniquely Wisconsin is highlighting the stories of peoples, the culture, and the history of our state, sprinkled with a bit of economic development and tourism as the intention. Several administrators spoke in favor of the project, including one of our neighbors, Sauk County. Is it being an attraction and a good way to display your county? Problem for us, though, it still remains about $60,000 to participate, to have those folks come in, do the stories, and promote it. Did have a chance, though, to glad hand with Executive Shulman at the meeting as well. Some of you folks that were involved with the referendum ad hoc committee might remember Executive Shulman. He came and gave us a little presentation on different referendum elements. And that's kind of his wheelhouse and his project. Centerpiece, of course, the main centerpiece of the conference hinged around the potential for having the changes to the shared revenue, the idea that there might be a 20% increase in that restructuring effort. Some of the talking points that came around from that were President Graham had mentioned that some of the ideas of linking it to the sales tax is to economically link it with government growth, or with economic success related right to government growth. So the idea that when the economy is going up, there's more funds for government to increase. If your economy is going down, then government needs to tailor down as well. Governor Evers talked optimistically of the reform package, saying that to his best understanding, no one was against it. There was, on the second day, a little bit of tamping down of expectations when Assembly Speaker Robin Voss did mention that, so part of the $7 billion surplus, from his perspective, only about $2 to $3 billion of that is reoccurring, with the other part of it being ARPA funds and kind of one-time offsets. So his position was, how realistic is it to potentially think that we have $7 million to appropriate out for local governments when that's not going to be a sustainable flow? Don't know. That's all kind of the politics of it. The governor did release his budget to for the Joint Finance Committee, and we'll await to see what they come out of it. But again, no one spoke in total opposition to it. There was just a little bit of tamping down that came from Assembly Speaker Voss. Future actions, Andy Phillips, attorney with the Tolis Law, who's also Corporation Counsel for Wisconsin Counties Association. Part of his legal brief included a topic on tribal lands held by tribal members and their tax exemption. Part of that is relates back to treaty language that was before the Wisconsin Constitution, and essentially kind of voids language of the Wisconsin Constitution, the uniformity of taxation language. It doesn't really impact us so much, other than there's a potential opportunity of, if they decide they want to do an amendment to the Constitution, might be able to go to bat for saying, is this an opportunity for us to change that uniformity to taxing different rates based on residency? I think we've had conversations on before, like other states in the United States, where they're allowed to tax folks at a different rate. So if you have folks, say, from Illinois that are property holders up here that only use it as a part-time type of a dwelling, we'd be able to do an increase in rate. Don't know if that's going to happen, but I did kind of grease the gears and was able to talk with Attorney Phillips on it afterwards. He didn't say no. He said maybe there's an opportunity there, and I will follow up if that becomes a topic of discussion. Other than that, you will see the materials likely populating on the Wisconsin Counties page. The link is on here. If there's any other additional questions, you can certainly ask them now or catch me after the meeting. Another part of it, too, is how we had talked about with the ambassador program. The 5 major initiatives is still what the platform is for the county to lobby as the Joint Finance Committee releases their version of the budget. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clint. I'll entertain a motion to accept the report. Art Bowie, seconded by Tim Gotchel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Of course not. Thank you. Okay, Clint, second thing, employer recruitment practices seminar.
I was able to attend a workforce attraction and retention seminar. It was sponsored by Southwest Prosperity Southwest. The seminar was directed by Ela, Regional Economic Development Director that you may know. And it also featured a Chris Zarnick, author of the book Winning the War for Talent. Looks like this is his little publication here, which we got a copy that we'll be reviewing and hopefully implementing. And there was also, we had Paul Scharfman, president of the Specialty Cheese Company Incorporated. The major issues that were noted, that I noted for explore and possible action, included some interesting statistics. He had it kind of painted up here on the less people to fill your jobs. Your baby boomers, which encompass about 75.4 million people, are slowly, well, probably past the prime on exiting the labor force. Generation X only fills at 65.9. Millennials coming online and in the workforce is 76.8 million, but then followed by a Generation Z of 67 million. So overall, you have less folks, and on top of that, you have less participation rates. Historically, population participation rates in labor has been about 68%. Today we're at 63. So you start adding all those numbers against you, it kind of paints it into pictures on why when we are posting jobs now, when we used to get hundreds of applications or multiple tens of applications, we now get onesies and twosies, and sometimes they're not meeting qualifications. The centerpiece really of the seminar really kind of focused on treating your recruitment effort as a business for profit would treat their sales, and really being aggressive and understanding your demographics, the pool that you're going after with, and trying to hit an emotional appeal versus a financial appeal on attracting people. Some of the stats that were kind of referenced was provided that you're at 40 to 60 percentile with compensation packages. Past that, you're trying to emotionally get people to move away from their job of comfort into your employment. He encouraged a focus on several initiatives, again, including advertising to reach an emotional appeal, understanding the cost of doing nothing, and that's from a business perspective. If we have open positions, what are the impacts of not filling those? Most applicably kind of with our Pine Valley, with our nursing home, if we don't have enough folks to meet census, what that's doing to our beds. Other understandings on that for a lot of our organizations that are not operating for profit. It's kind of a little bit lost because you're based really on service hours, but still applicable. Also understanding if people are unable or unwilling to work for you, there's a difference. If they're unable to work for you, we might have limitations on different ADA types of compliances or not being able to reach them, or if it's going to have to be a remote type of a thing versus just simply unwilling to work for you. And then understand what your current employees, why they remain with you. So some good points there. As an outcome from it, we plan on reading, digesting this, and then working with our HR folks in trying to increase our retention rates as well as our recruitment rates. I'll be in my office for some of you folks that like to stop by and read that type of stuff. Tim, I'll probably see you next week. Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, am I present?
Thank you, Mr. Seep.
Thank you. Count me in.
We got you now. Okay. Takes us to the next topic, employee retention statistics. And I see Tammy is here.
We do, Mr. Chair, looking tonight for a motion to accept report. The following reports have been prepared to identify trends and statistics on our compensations and our employee entry and exit data. The first spreadsheet that we'll review tonight will show the gross pay of the past 5 years, plus some additional breakdowns on such things as overtime, comp time, bonus time. The sheet also includes our new hires versus our terminations and who we issued out W-2s to, and there's also information there on our average employee headcount that we processed this year. Before we flip to the spreadsheet, I kind of want to define what we're calling new hires. So these are employees that are starting a new position, does not necessarily include a transfer or taking a second position. And then terminations are any positions that an employee is terminating from. The data that arrives on the spreadsheet is from a monthly report that Tammy pushes out on the 12th of each month that includes our full-times, part-times, temp casuals, and demographic breakdown of women. That spreadsheet you'll find on page number 3 of your document 8 in your folder, and it kind of looks like this. I'll spare you I'll describe the sheet here as we had talked about. So top left corner, see gross pay. That goes across for the 5 years. Below that then is the breakdown of the pay on your left column there. It goes through all the way through gift card bonus. Below that then you'll see the next breakdown for our W-2s that are issued, our average number of employees or our head count, new hires and terminations, and then those two will be broken down on a second sheet that we'll take a look at with more detail by department. Below that, then you'll see a breakdown on demographics based on our years of employment to kind of see when our employees that are separating, what their tenure is. I will back this up and give you folks a minute to just digest that.
While we're doing that, we didn't accept Clint's report on the recruitment practices seminar, so I'll take a motion and a second on that. Mr. Williamson, seconded by Gacho. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have accepted that report. Now take a look at the New hires and terminations.
Okay.
Chad,
So then the second sheet, Mr. Chair, it includes more details of a breakdown again of new hires and terminations by the department. It's processed through the county payroll. A couple points to note as before we look onto that. Keep in mind that Fair and Recycling Department, they remove their judges and employees and put them into a contracted service role. So you're going to see an anomaly there, as well as Simon Center came in and reviewed with Tammy some of their lifeguards that either have not recertified or have been multiple years without having participated. So they have also been removed to the system. And then a keynote, as you'll see, is that our hire and quit in the same year is continues to grow. And that data looks like this here. We'll blow this up for folks at home. And what you're seeing across the top is year 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then our current year stats are below that in the bottom left there, highlighted in yellow. And as we talked about, you'll see kind of the anomalies in 2022 with Fair having 61 terms and Simon's having 35 terms, which are higher than average. So the statistics, to kind of put this in perspective, we've got a couple different data points here. Kind of the main industry standard, not necessarily market standard, comes from Wisconsin Bureau of Labor Statistics. Their most recent report was in September of 2022. They show that local government employees, as of January 2022, had an average tenure, a median tenure of about 6.9 years. We have some additional statistics here, and I'll turn the microphone over to Assistant Dahl to kind of talk through some additional trend data that she captured for us in some graphs. Cheryl, go ahead.
So it was, yeah, the public employees was 6.9 years, and those that had higher years by those statistics was because they based it off saying the age was 35 years or older. So I did the county's tenure versus the national median age. We start out a little ahead in the early years, and then as time goes on, the national kind of beats out our employment track record. So that's just the statistics compared to the national. Then we have the longevity of the current employees, the bottom left chart. And the blue color is not very good, but I think the big blue slice on the right-hand side is 3 years or less. I can't see what that says on there.
0 to 3.
Yep, yep. And then it goes,
4 to 7.
yep, as it goes
10.
on.
11 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 20, and 21 years of service, there was 48. That is your darkest top one there.
And then on the right-hand side, I have the termed employees and their year of service when they termed. And of course, the largest slices are, less than 1 year, the 1 to 3, and then 4 to 6. And then as you go up, they get a little smaller, so.
Okay.
what can I infer from this? Tell me.
Well, this is breaking it down on what it looks like. Some of the things that we know for sure is that the more turnover that we have, the more we experience with a lot more processing time for sure in our office. Other inferences that are not put in dollar amounts is with turnover comes costs that we know, but it's a soft cost. It's not captured necessarily in how much money that we have here. That's kind of one of the elements that the seminar that I just went to talked about is understanding what the cost is of your vacant seats, if you have them. Again, our direction isn't necessarily to make profits though, so our expenditures that we're losing out of not having people in the seats doesn't equate to lost profits. It more equates to lost service hours in most cases. Not all of them, obviously, again, with nursing home and other folks that are banking on revenues and having people in seats, that's not true. The other element is, the mark that we have in our compensation policy is based on Bureau of Labor Statistics, which would say a median is our 6.9. Things below that, we would want to adjust to try to get us to that. Certainly, we understand and recognize and embrace that we're operating with a nursing home, which is going to generate more turnover, and not just to pick on a nursing home. We have other departments too that have turnover. Even upstairs in our office up here, we've had folks that have come and gone within a year. So it's not just to pick on those departments, but those things are adding to our turnover. So it's brought forward to you to kind of digest, so you have an understanding of where we're at today. As conversations again build towards the next year, and understanding what we're going to do with efforts to try to recruit and retain people, not only with just compensations, but in trying to work through some of our other plans and our strategic initiatives. This is kind of what we're looking at right now as our backdrop, or as our baseline. If we're going to make improvements, we would like to see these numbers starting to trend in the other direction. I would open up to any types of further questions or other types of things that you'd like to see the information presented at this point. We also have Tammy here that can talk on the elements of where it comes from and how much work it is to try to, from her perspective, on getting new folks in the seats and replacing old folks.
Clint, is it a problem that can be solved by money? I mean, increasing the hourly wage.
Certainly is probably in part of it. If you can't compete to the point where folks are going someplace else to pay the bills, that's going to be part of it. Especially when we know our hardest recruiting types of positions are kind of at the lower end, and folks that are trying to meet bills, those same types of costs that are not progressive but are regressive impact us all the same. So yes, that's something we have to keep an eye on. We know our total CPI right now for consumer price index is around an 8. To try to keep up with our consumption power with wages. Now, granted, you have the arguments that CPI is based on more heavy populated areas versus being out in the rural areas. So some of that might be a little bit deferred, but the reality is that inflation is kicking us like it's kicking everybody else. So wages and compensations has to be a part of the solution. The other part is going to have to be our continued efforts with work culture, flexibilities, allowing people to take pride in what they're doing, as well as feeling fulfillments and serving the public.
I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead, Sean.
So when Cheryl was showing the charts, there was a chart in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah, on that page. Let's see, would that be the x-axis, the bottom? I always get those mixed up. Is that meant to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4, 5, 6, and 7? Are we showing years here?
I think, well, the years are on the left-hand side. So the age is on the left-hand side, and then I think it was the years on the bottom, so the long.
Okay, so it looked to me like and I assume county tenure, you mean Richland County tenure.
Correct.
So it looks to me like our employees are longer than they stay longer at Richland County than the national median.
At an older age, yeah. The 35 and over, yes.
Well, it looks like even 25 to 34 and 20 to 24 is above the national average.
Well, what they say the national average is, for some reason, they're basing it off 35. Now, I'm not sure why they picked that. They say they stay longer at 35, but we are, you're correct, staying longer, younger than the national average.
Okay. Yeah, I thought this was great information to see, so thanks for putting it all together. I'm not saying we don't need to improve by pointing that out. I just think it's positive that now I don't know if that's government employees or if that's public and private combined in that chart that you were showing.
Just
Uh,
public. Yeah.
Oh,
Public
that's
sector.
public,
Private
okay. Okay, so our tenure is longer than the average nationwide for public employment. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Anything else?
One question on Pine Valley. I see, is that accurate? 74 new employees since the start of 2023?
Here, 1 second.
Are you looking, Steve?
This chart here, you go back to the other
Oh.
page, but. Okay.
There's nobody online here yet.
So
Okay, I read that wrong, so.
repeat the question and then Tammy answer the question, please.
The question was on Pine Valley, there's a number of 74 there, but now I see that is full-time since March 7th.
That's
If you all are talking, we can't hear it online.
We're
So-
trying to get the mic operational here, Sean.
Is this on?
Okay, thanks.
So that chart there, I did a report today just to show how many employees that we had full-time by each department, part-time, temp, casual. So that's what that first part of the chart is. We have a total right now, as of today, 515 employees. 233 of them are full-time, 10 are part-time, and 272 are temp, casual, or limited term. And since the beginning of the year, we've had 23 employees term already, with another one that came through today that's not on this chart.
Okay,
That answered my question. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
all right, Clint, continue, please.
Okay, I think we're up to number 9, Mr. Chair.
Number 9.
Okay. Just open here. Okay, another report for you today. Last week we had a contact. I believe you heard from the same person today that had some concerns with our ETF system. And so with that being said, I've asked Tammy Hendrickson, our payroll and benefits specialist, who's also kind of our key point on our insurance and transition, to give us an update and a report on the different elements of the transition, including like our challenges and learning points, the benefits yet that we are receiving from it, and talk on future actions for preparing for the next enrollment. So that being said, I will turn it over to Tammy Hendricks.
Okay, so gravitating over to the state plan has been a lot of complications. There's been, with every plan and meeting that we had, we thought we had everything worked out between EBC, who handles the HRA portion of the deductible, and ETF, and how everything was going to work out. It seemed like as soon as we get one thing figured out, then there would be a monkey wrench thrown at us. Nope, that's not exactly how that works. And every little step that we did, we were continuously taking 2 steps back. Working with the state plan in itself is very complicated. Their manual is, several hundred pages long. They give limited training, and they've revamped the system from when we were with them before. So it was a learning curve for me in itself, and then Cheryl and everybody else that had to handle taking the applications and getting the information out. Getting the information out is a big struggle. We do not have anything dedicated that we can give directly to employees. So we have to rely on department heads to get information to the employees, and there's a huge breakdown and disconnect with that. So employees were
Why
not,
is that, Tammy?
we have no way to effectively communicate with employees. Not all employees have access to an email. And so We have to, basically, the way we operate is we give the information to department heads. Department heads are supposed to disperse the information to the employees.
In
And
some cases, that's a posting on a bulletin board, I would imagine.
yep. So a lot of communication, a lot of information was not passed along to the employees. I will say that we worked really well together with the outlying departments, trying to get as much accurate information as possible. But on a day-to-day basis, that would change, which is making the situation even more complicated and everyone's easily frustrated. The insurance options, as the lady said before, 19 is way too much, but the state said we had to offer them. So normally, these 4 plans is what I would have offered. This is what I would have normally sent out to employees. That's what we did before. And only one of them would have been, 2 of them would have been affordable to the employees. The other 2 were not affordable to the employees. The other remaining plans, they're outside of Richland County. So if you live in Vernon County, La Crosse County, Sauk County, Iowa County, it gives those employees a chance to choose plans that work in their location, their county.
So out of 19, 4 of them were really realistic for our employees.
2.
Only
Two.
2.
2 that were affordable, the Dean Health Plan and the GHC of Eau Claire, Greater Wisconsin.
Depending on where you might live, though, as we would
Right.
have some employees.
Those were the ones that are available in Richland County, but the caveat to that is there is limited providers over here that take those plans.
Right.
So even though they're available in Richland County, there's only limited providers that take the insurance. If the employees wanted to stay with Quartz, which is what they were all hoping for, the Quartz for a single plan was going to cost the employees $387.32 per month, and a family plan $964.33, but that is without the surcharge. So it's even higher yet once we factor in the surcharge. So that is not affordable to the employees. So what we worked out is anybody that had to stay with Quartz, they were going to have to choose a Dane County plan and find a Dane County provider. And that would have been Quartz UW Health or Quartz West. So it's, trying to explain this to employees. If they would come in and meet with me, I could explain it to them, and I would explain it to, the departments that were working with employees. And it was countless hours calling providers. And like GHC, when I called and talked to them, they're like, yep, that is accepted. Well, then I had somebody else call and they're like, no, it's not accepted. And then I called and they're like, yes, it's accepted. So we were going back and forth between the insurance plans. And what it worked out to be was, because we're with the state of Wisconsin, their customer service employees did not understand that there is a difference between GHC and a private plan versus GHC and the state plan. There's a clear distinction. We didn't know that there was a difference that there was 2 different kinds of options. So once we figured that out, we let the employees know, we sent out that information. I know Richland Hospital has been trying to get GHC as an accepted plan up here. And you sent an email the other day that it was still in the works, that there was no agreement that was going to be made.
There was not. That's the first that I've heard that they've reached.
But according to Mrs. Sabrani, it's going to be accepted now, but who knows?
Until
That
we
was
see something in writing.
That was yesterday, and maybe today it'll be.
Exactly, because he just sent the email Monday. Yeah, Monday, I think you sent that out. That GHC they didn't come into an agreement with Richland Hospital. So, I mean, we were dealing with all of that. The decision guide that ETF gave us. This is the decision guide that employees were given. And it had to be paper ones because the state only gave me 5 of these. So I had to email this out, and the employees had to contact each of the health insurance plans to see if their provider was accepted by the insurance. But again, if the employee didn't dictate and let them know that we are with the state of Wisconsin health insurance plan, the customer service rep may have given them wrong or incorrect information because they didn't understand that it's a state plan and not just a regular dean plan or a regular courts plan. So that was a huge issue. And unfortunately, I'm sure employees made decisions that really were not in the best interest for them because they may have done their due diligence, but it was only with the information that they had. Let's see here. The health insurances, only one health insurance company sent me booklets, and they sent me 20. We've got employees enrolled in 6 of the health insurance plans throughout the state, 7 actually, 7 now. But I only have books for one of the plans. So I have nothing to give to the employees. I have nothing to explain to the employees. I just have to tell them that they have to take care of it themselves. And unfortunately, that is the trend that the state is heading towards. I just did a webinar today. In 2024, the state is going to roll out a new IAS system, and the employees will be 100% responsible for entering in their own insurance information into the state system, and they will be handling their own COBRA paperwork. I do not know how that is going to work. So stay tuned for that, because that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough one because not all employees have access to a computer at work or at home. So that means the county is probably going to have to put in some computer stations, private computer stations, so employees can handle this type of entering that they're going to need to take care of. The health insurance plan itself is extremely complicated because now they have to deal with not only the deductible, the HRA they are going to have to handle 100% themselves, whereas before courts handled the file feed of bill submission to EBC. EBC would handle the keeping track of, okay, the employee met the threshold, now we're going to start submitting payments on their behalf. That's all gone. The employees have to handle that 100% themselves. So now employees are going to have to create accounts through EBC. They have to transmit all medical and prescription bills to the EBC site. And then once they've reached the HRA threshold for reimbursement, they will have to submit a claim form. That is as best as I can understand it as of today. Until I get an employee to go through the process, I really don't know if that's how it's going to work. But that's the way I understand it as of today. The HRA turned out, we had a meeting between us, EBC, the state. We thought we had it all worked out in the 9th hour. All the insurance providers came back and said, oops, you're with this state plan. We cannot do any of this for you. So then EBC had to rewrite all summary plan descriptions. Then they found out that prescriptions were part of the deductible. So then they had to rewrite the contract agreement that Clint just signed, I think 2 weeks ago, allowing prescriptions to be submitted to EBC without an EOB. So there's been all of that. The state, when all the data entering was done, employees chose their provider. That was all submitted into the state system. Employees received those confirmations. However, when the state submitted all the file feeds to each of the insurance companies, they did not include the information of the provider. So then each of the insurances chose for the employee who their provider was going to be. So then I had to send an email out to employees, check your cards to find out who was chosen for you. If it's incorrect, you're going to have to call customer service and get that corrected. The Dean Health Insurance cards, we were told that they were mailed out December 8th. The end of December, we were having employees call. They were all told, yep, they were mailed out December 8th. I contacted the state and said, nobody has received their health insurance cards. So the state had to put in a request to get all the health insurance cards resubmitted and sent out again. The employees got them about a week or so later, and then a few days after that, then the original ones from December 8th showed up. The documentation requirements, if an employee is single but has children, they have to provide birth certificates for each of the children that they are insuring. If they had children before they got married, they have to provide the birth certificates. if you have a loss of coverage, the employee now has to, if the employee was covered by their spouse and had a loss of coverage, the employee is going to have to get from their spouse documentation that we have to submit to the state before the state will pick up the insurance for the employee and their family. Prescription coverage, there's still a gray area that we're trying to figure out with that. We were originally told that employees were going to have to pay 100% of the cost of the prescription up front. And then we're finding with some employees that's not actually true, but we're finding from month to month. We had one employee pay $5 for a prescription last month and pay $500 this month. So there isn't consistency with prescriptions. As I said earlier, communication, that is my number one issue. I cannot communicate effectively with employees with all of the different issues that we've got. So I'm sure employees are frustrated. Employees don't understand to the extent some of the benefits that are available to them. I know here in the courthouse, I have a pretty good rapport. And so I'll sit here when I find out something, I literally will walk around and say, hey, do you know about this? You better check it out. And I'll explain it to them, you know, do a one-on-one. But it's kind of hard to do when we've got over 300 employees. I can't just walk in and say, hey. So there's that hurdle that we've got to get through. And then once we move to the state plan, the state does not offer any type of legal resource for me. So what that means is Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott, they provided all of my legal documentation that I needed to give to all the employees. There's certain things that have to be done at certain times of the year. And Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott would do all that legal legwork for me. Now that is shoved back onto my plate, and I'm not an attorney. I don't have access to a lot of the HR resources that says that, hey, there's a new legal document that we're supposed to be supplying to employees, you know, so I have no idea if what I'm doing is 100% compliant. And there's a lot of different legal pieces that have to be done at certain times of the year. So there you go.
Thank you.
So those are the challenges. Some of our benefits, of course, is that while it's challenging to explore. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
There's a question online. There we go. Hold on. Question, chat.
From Aaron to everyone, the city has the state plan. Do they have any of these issues? Question.
The city doesn't have an HRA, which has caused us problems, and the city also has zero deductible. So that's some of the problems we ran into.
Yeah, they have, I don't know if it's the P02 or the P12 plan. I don't know if their dental's included with theirs or not, or if they're a standalone dental like we are. Because we have the P17, the high deductible health plan. So it's two totally separate policies.
Mr. Gatchell.
So the state and local central plan is through courts is available. It's just
Yeah,
not
it's
affordable?
Court Central that's available here in Richland County.
right.
And the state comes up with based off of actuarial rates. And so Court Central up here is extremely cost prohibitive for employees. I don't know why it came in as high as it did, but it's extremely high for employees to be able to choose Court Central here. But if they want to drive to Dane County, Courts is much more affordable.
Right. So the court central would be much similar to what the employees had
Yes.
prior to the state plan.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Just what's a ballpark of not affordable? Is that what you listed, like $900 a month for a family?
Yeah, I know it. I know the family is over $1,000 with the surcharge, but off the top, oh, I can tell you, I actually have the rates here.
Well, the speaker tonight said $14,000 a year it would cost per family. I
Court
believe.
Central, $1,020.54 per month to have Court Central and be able to go here in Richland County. The single one is $409.80, and that's if you're full-time. If you're part-time or if you're a temp casual enrolled in retirement, it's a lot more than that.
Okay. And remember that the rates go down precipitously once we get some years into the plan. Is that just the surcharge going away?
Just the surcharge.
Okay.
The issue with our health insurance plan is because we overuse or overspend on claims than what we pay in premiums. And historically, I know it's been that way for the last 30 years. And that's why our rates go up so much each year is, you know, they're trying to recoup their losses.
So with that then, so our benefits, and it is a challenge to try to sort out the options of having 19 options available. It's a further challenge on, as an employer, trying to say these providers or these insurance providers cover these medical providers, and then putting yourselves in a quasi-legal framework of owning that type of a thing, because providers can switch and jump, and that becomes more of an insurance and a local provider type of an issue. Challenges that go with it. Participating in a larger pool, though, as we had talked about, is going to reduce some of our risk when it comes to rate jumping. So hopefully some of our medical challenges that we experience with claims now is absorbed in a larger pool. Eventually that probably does trickle into the actuarial rates in which the state will come out with for your different counties, but we're participating in a larger pool. Our future actions and in preparing for the next open enrollment is to try to, as we learn more about the system, is to try to do that internal educational component, to direct education with the changes now to try to have things all entered by the employee. That puts us in a different situation too on how do we, used to be kind of the thing on here's your form, please fill this out, and then we key it in for them. Now with them keying it in, it almost feels like we're going to have to be in a computer classroom environment with small groups and sit down and going through and having them enter a login, making a profile, trying to select their plans, or at least walking them through that so they know when they're at home on their time or on their computer, they understand at least how to go through the application process online. The next open enrollment will come around for, will be in here in October, which is surprisingly is fast approaching. We still are trying to tease out the elements with the HRA and understanding how that's going to work now with employees having the onus of, as Tammy described, it doesn't automatically impact through EBC on their point of payment. They're going to have to collect their bills after the summary of benefits and then submit that off to EBC for reimbursement. So we'll try to monitor that and try to gauge what the cost effect is there, and our future benefit of having an HRA, or if we need to consider something different there. Is there any other actionable points that come to mind at this point, Tammy?
Clint, how can we make this better?
It's going to be a learning thing. I think, as we talked about prior to the adoption of this, we knew that it's a beast to kind of wrangle with. We're working through the learning points that we went through here tonight. Second proposal that's coming on the docket here tonight is the incorporation of trying to have centralized HR director to try to help with the benefits management element of it, which hopefully tries to get more service hours put towards that, but it's still going to remain a challenge.
Well, rather than an HR director, it sounds like we need a health insurance keyboard entry specialist that will work with employees and have a station set up for employees to access. Would that help?
Until we figure out how the state is going to implement this new system, I don't even know how best to answer that, because they're still trying to answer all the different questions that we threw at them today about, you know, because the way they were showing, you know, a pretend employee enrolling their stuff in, you know, it auto-populates, okay, here's your health insurance plans that are available to you. This is what the cost is, and based off of semi-monthly. So we're all trying to figure out, how are they getting the information that this employee is paid monthly, bi-monthly, semi-monthly, if they're full-time, part-time, if they want pre-tax versus post-tax, what about the documentation that's required? So until all those questions get answered, we don't know how this is gonna shake out. But it's good to start thinking ahead to next year, because they're gonna roll this out in June of 2024.
I feel that we've created a dilemma here, and our employees are kind of caught in the middle. That was not our intent. You know, our intent is to always do good for our employees.
We hear about problems, and in our problems administratively and trying to make it work is the bottom of the funnel where all the problems typically kind of arrive at. So I'm assuming that there are folks out there that are happy with what they have. You do have some folks that when law now entered with a insurance provider, the next enrollment season hopefully isn't a whole lot of touching. If they're not changing their plan, it should be a more of a natural roll into it. So hopefully we get more and more of our folks that are experiencing trouble into that reoccurring rolling over. But it does lead to other conversations then too. If we have 1/3 of our workforces turning over annually, that's 1/3 that is not getting into the pipeline of reoccurring insurance carryover. So there's going to be challenges with it. So
Well, Tammy, can you do this? I mean, or do you need some help? I mean, I'm prepared to advise Clint to add the staff to handle this problem.
Well, I'm not gonna deny we need help because, you know, when we're dealing with the employees and the high turnover that we got in the terminations, you know, we've streamlined as much as we can. Like right now, I'm meeting employees once a week instead of every single day because I just don't have the time. But then there's still the time to enter all their data in, send out all the legal paperwork, that type of stuff. And then if it goes to something like this, while it lessens the burden one way, we're still going to have to handhold the other way. So I don't know if we're going to save any time in the long run.
and I do have some comments when we do get to item number 12 with the possibility of a human resources director that talks on the organizational setup of that department and potential future positions to try to help carry with causes like this.
Anyone else?
One question, Mr. Chair, for Tammy. Do you budget, when you do your timesheet, do you separate it by HR and payroll?
No.
Is there any way you can? Because I would like to see in a year from now how many hours you've actually spent, which would help justify our HR position. But just a question.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for everything you do. It's not pleasant, I know, dealing with people and when they have these kinds of problems.
Say we don't have to worry about justifying the HR department. I mean, it's pretty simple to see that we're taking all these people and slicing them to do whatever to make this stuff happen. I mean, the HR department, I don't know how we function with 500 employees without one, to be honest with you. I mean, thank God for everybody doing their part and more than their part to help get through it. I mean, that's a big, the benefits themselves are a problem, but turning over 30% of your workforce, okay, I got to get this paperwork filled out, this paperwork filled out, this paperwork out. And then 6 months later, you're doing it to the same position you just filled. You know, I mean, there's no question that the HR department needs to be taken care of and sooner than later. I mean, so that's all I got.
Okay, Administrator Langrick, do you want to go to the next topic then? We've heard a lot about the transition and how smoothly it's going.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we'll jump to item number 11. If we're ready for it. So this is kind of in context of trying to meet our strategic plan. We have as part of our develop a culture of support for employees. Part of our tactics and actions included celebrate success and professional and personal achievements of employees, recognize new hires, retirements, and years of service milestones, build a culture that supports and celebrates its people. So we put together a spreadsheet here, a resolution with a recognition of several different categories, one of 40 plus years of service, 30 plus years of service, a 20-year benchmark, 10-year benchmark, and 5-year benchmark for recognition. The different retirements we also have laid out here on months, years and months that they had served with us. It's item number 11, a little bit more detail there. And looking for discussion on if this kind of is the way that you'd like to go with recognizing these. It was something I think historically that was done when we did have folks retired. We tried to do a resolution with as much items as we had going on. We lost track of that. an idea that was brought forward from Director Adam Haiti with UW Extension and his experiences with other counties. He said a good solution is, rather than trying to do them as they occur once a year, go back and do one resolution to recognize and celebrate the achievements. Complications that come up with this, though, is the idea of where you want to cut off your recognition. I've had also a couple departments already kind of express on, well, if we did 30 years, why don't we do 20 years and up to also recognize everybody that's fallen into the, below that type of a threshold. Because right now it's who's at 5 years, who's at 10 years, who's at 20 years, and then 30 years and above. So is it appropriate to recognize that's everybody above 20 years? I would defer to you folks. The conversation is always going to arrive at if you recognize 20 and up. If you're at 19, then do you feel like you're slighted? I don't know. At some point, you're going to arrive at some folks feeling like they're being underappreciated potentially, but not being on a list. I think it will be easier as it becomes a generational practice because you'll have folks starting at zero and working their way through the benchmarks. But in trying to recognize folks as a new initiative, there's always running the risk of folks that feel slighted because that they're potentially not being recognized for their years of service. And I don't want to make them feel underappreciated if you have 29 and a half years of service by any means. But these were what is presented as what we thought was a good approach to take a whack at this. So, Mr. Chair, any thoughts or considerations that you'd have?
No, I think this is, well, my thoughts are this is long overdue, and it's been needed, it's been necessary. And I know the other place that I worked for 30 years, they would do this, and you'd also get this, which you get some sort of service award when you reached certain milestones, so thresholds. Do we do that? We don't do that, I don't think.
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair. It could be happening at department type of levels that I don't know about, but not across the
We used to, I mean, I've got a whole drawer full of cheesy cufflinks, that I received, but then they wised up at American Family and started giving, you could actually get something of value at service anniversary. So, but I think this list, I think is great. Yeah, you have to choose a level someplace. What do you guys think? You're looking at it.
What's the timeline for when are employees fully vested in the Wisconsin retirement system?
5 years.
Okay, that's what we have in the county board rules right now. So we say that we will have resolutions commemorating the retirement of county employees if they're fully vested. So I think what you all have done is perfect. I really appreciated seeing this. I thought it was so interesting since now I've met a lot of these people, and so thank you for doing this. And I'm very supportive of this. We need to be doing more of this. I don't know if we need to be giving out trinkets. I think just actually thanking them and recognizing them for their service goes a long way.
Not too many people wear cufflinks anymore. You need a motion on this, sir.
This would be a motion to present resolution to the county board.
So moved.
Mr. Gotchel, seconded by Manning. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Number 12 then, are we ready to talk about Human Resources Director job?
You are, Mr. Chair.
Is
We've
that where
got
we are?
several different items in here for you this evening for consideration. Cover sheet is on item 12, looking for a motion tonight to recommend approval of a Human Resources Director job description and approval of creating a Human Resources Department and publish an ad for employment and send to the county board for approval. The item number 12A, you'll see the new position request form taken from our policy. To get to the actual report or the supporting document, probably best describes purpose and placement and such. The following documentation is in support of the request for the new HR director position. Carlson Detman has proposed, based on the position description that we had put forward, a placement at a level Q. I'm recommending against them this evening for placement of a recruitment effort at a grade level P to be put on here. If we cannot gather a pool at level P, then I'll come back to you folks and ask for a higher grade level. The needs and desires that kind of act as a warrant or justification for this position are as follows. Our county strategic plan, underneath the streamlined organization structure, underneath that strategy, we have a task to create a finance, HR, and maintenance department, and this was also prioritized for a 2023 action. Our finance and personnel actions, the committee took action December 6th of 2022 to include the assumption of centralizing and consolidating HR and finance functions across all departments. A recent notification of a resignation in Health and Human Services Administration and Buildings Operations Manager was submitted. That's about 500 hours of HR duties annually that now we're kind of left hanging. And this is in conjunction also with the directive of HHS to reduce 5 positions. And we have continued requests from several departments for more standardized HR reports. Some of the needs and such you've heard today from administration. The financial impacts of this position, the majority, I'm hoping, of the funds can arrive at a fund transfer from Health and Human Services with the reduction of the position on that side of the street. Director Clements is estimating right now there potentially is about $5,893.25 that can be transferred for 2023. That still leaves the administrator with the challenge of finding out how the position is going to be funded in the future years, on top of the proposed reduction yet for consolidation. Annual package potentially for the position at a rate P is going to be a roughly $116,857, but that's also though including of taking into consideration what they have for a insurance package, etc. So
an annual salary on this job is
$79,851 starting.
Right.
Yep. And so for the remainder of the year, estimating roughly about $70,000 of package remaining, possibly available from HHS, $57,000. So we still have some other money to find. And that also considers, though, too, there might be additional operational expenses depending on where the department is placed and equipment needs, etc. Proposed change to the department organizational chart. You'll see this also with a resolution on the changes to it. There is a pencil line change here of putting that as a P, and then moving the payroll and benefits specialist underneath that position as reporting to it. The proposed organizational structure then for the department would look as follows. Human Resources Director would report to the county administrator. Below that would be a payroll and benefits specialist, and then potentially future HR specialist position as we continue to work through a consolidation and centralization plan for HR. The plan for implementation, it's my tentative plan to kind of roll this out in some incremental phases. The first phase is establishment, hire a director and stand up the department. Priorities focused on supporting recruitment with posting, interviews, skills testing, orientation with payroll, benefits, and general policies, FMLA, benefits enrollment, workers' compensation, employee relations issues, separation process, HHS general orientations, and backup on payroll. Phase 2 then would be evaluation of centralized HR across the county, investigate further support of department-specific HR functions, including time card support, training and certification tracking, etc. Potentially then phase 3 is to finalize and implement a centralized and HR plan for county support. And then phase 4 is preparation for the transition to a new ERP system with human content management, time card management, and payroll functions. In your packet, then you'll also see a note from Carlson Detman with their recommendation for a placement on Q. There's a copy of the job description and several other supporting documents, including resolution language for your consideration on this topic tonight. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. What help me out here? Which exhibit am I searching for here?
This one right here is 12A. We're looking at 12A in your folder.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the front.
Well, you go so fast, I can't follow. All right,
I just get so excited, Mr. Chair.
maybe it's just me.
Clint, just on your list of how you want to do things,
Yes, sir.
can you pull that up? And the only reason I'm asking, does it make sense that, is that ERP system more beneficial sooner than later? You know what I mean? And I'm trying to look at, okay, so you'll only have two people in this org chart. You know, I would assume that payroll functions require a lot of time because they do time sheets and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen, but I work in a factory, so we do things much differently. But to me, do we need to push that up higher to the top of the list? I guess is the question.
Two different pieces to it. First is the cost. It's going to be a transition in the realm of 100,000s, and I think in our financial planning, we have it down the road. Other element is, from my experiences in doing transitions to an ERP, there's not only how we do time roll and pay cards, it's how we do all of our financials. I think we're better suited by getting HR director in place and finance director in place, having a centralized view and then doing the transition, because so much of it is hinged on understanding your behaviors to try to make a new system try to match what you're doing for behaviors.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Gatto.
Two questions, Clint. First, is there a more detailed explanation for wanting to hire at a P other than a P is cheaper than a Q?
A P is cheaper than a Q, and then I also have my own vision on where it follows in the chart. I would like to leave space availability potentially for a finance director, which I'm imagining is going to fall on the strata, as well as that's kind of the big one, is the equity on where it's going to fall in our internal scale. If it doesn't work out and we don't get a pool, we might end up coming back and saying, I failed at this, we have to go to we're going to try at a Q. I can't promise either at a Q that we're going to bring in a qualified applicant that we're going to feel comfortable with.
Dollar difference between P and Q, roughly.
I think it's like $3 an hour. I think it was $2 an hour. It's from a 40 and change to a 38 and change. So 2,000 and some over an annual salary.
So second question.
4,000 and some over an annual salary.
The catalyst or launching point for this was a position that's being vacated at HHS, potentially being the catalyst that helps us get here sooner. Do we have a plan? I know that we're in phase 2, we're centralizing HR across the county. That, in my mind, takes a pretty specific sunset plan to go around to your bigger departments and say, okay, 2 years from now, our vision is to have the HR function central. And so all these little pockets, I mean, those are real people doing real work and being paid a salary to do that work right now. And I just wouldn't want to hamstring an HR director coming in saying, oh, we can't hire you a specialist, or we can't give you the staff that you need to truly centralize this department because we can't pay for it. Yet we continue to do it in little pockets around the county. Is that plan in existence? And we're not privy to it, which is just fine. But has thought been put into how to make that happen?
I have thoughts on where I think some of the levy money is coming from. My thoughts historically haven't always lined up with what you folks think are the best thoughts, and it's your thoughts that count on it. The catalyst on this situation is we do have a reduction in the needs. Keep in mind the 5 positions that are reduced one of these was an earmark, and that's coming under a different directive than the directive of $100,000 that I have to find. I don't have that plan all put together yet, but at this point, our other option would be try to fill the position for the next 6 months, or find somebody that's willing to do that for 6 months until it's eliminated off, or start getting the position going, and we're going to have to solve where the finances are going to come from as we already go into the 2024 budget year. So again, I don't know if that answers the question directly, but we're going to have to figure it out. This person's going to help me where it's all coming from is going to be a collection of things. Trying to take pockets away becomes a challenge because then it's, well, do you take one employee then that's at 40 hours and doing 20 of those is HR? Do you give them a half-time employee? There's still some other needs that folks need at their departments. So it's going to be a challenge. But right now we're going without the service hours if we don't act now.
Pine Valley is the model I'm familiar with, Clint. I mean, would that be down the road plans, transition?
Yes, I see that as like in a phase 2 and phase 3 on taking a look at it. As we mentioned, there's concerns that I still have, but you folks have made it clear that you want us to still continue to look at that. How the finances play that with that though is a challenge because as we talked about, they operate on a proprietary fund outside of levy. So in order for me to say that I'm doing a reduction on levy by trying to fill their needs out there, then there has to be some type of a bill back or asking for more return from their revenues in order to try to reduce the overall levy cost for that positions. Other factors too include their current person that does HR also wears a hat of taking on nursing needs and potentially backfilling that position yet to still take care of their nursing needs. So discussions are happening. Tricia and Tom actually met with me 2 weeks ago to kind of talk on their different elements that they had, and we're continuing to try to crack the nut.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
I'm really supportive of this. Yeah, it's in our strategic plan. It's something that the county board obviously wants an HR department, along with finance and maintenance. I think I'm just not quite comfortable yet with how all this fits together. And Clint, you've hit on a couple of the concerns I had, the $100,000 that we were asking for you to reduce from your budget by finding them in other departments. Of course, that was related to finance as well. And I can appreciate what you're saying now. I didn't understand it reading through the materials earlier, but you've got someone who it sounds like is kind of an HR manager for HHS. And you need someone to come in there to do that work. So I guess I'm understanding that better now, and I thank you for explaining that. I'm just not quite sure how it all fits together. So I think I just need a little more time to digest this after reading it this afternoon, and before feeling like I can support this. But I think I can get there. I just need to understand a little bit better the plan.
Sean, I would offer that if we don't do this, then that position has to be filled at HHS, only to possibly be done at the end of 6 months or whenever the transition is achieved, the phase 2 of the transition. So I think we strike here while the iron is hot. I mean, this opportunity has presented itself. We knew we were going to go in this direction, and now here it is. And it's not totally funded, but it's partially funded. And I think I'm an optimist. I think there's going to be savings that come back from phasing out these pockets, if you will. We're going to have the money eventually, if not tomorrow.
Well, Marty, what I'm saying is I think the solution currently is double dipping because not only have we asked Clint to find $100,000 in savings by consolidating HR and finance, and we had a good, healthy, long discussion about that a few months ago, but then we're also asking HHS to reduce the number of, this is something they offered, it's in our financial plan now, to reduce the number of staff they have, I think by 4 or 5 FTE. And I think HHS is thinking, oh, we'll use this to count toward that. And then I think Clint is thinking, well, I'll use it to count toward my 100,000. And so that's the part of the plan I'm not comfortable with. If we strike while the iron's hot, but it's too quick, then we're going to have problems down the road when we set our 2024 budget. And I think that's what Clint was alluding to when he said, your administrator is going to have to find ways to handle this, because we're already planning on a 4% tax increase for 2024. So that means we're going to be adding this on to that tax increase potentially, or we have to make cuts in other spots. And that's what I'm uncomfortable with.
Clint, you think you have a response to that, don't you?
No, you're saying exactly what I tried to portray, Supervisor Murphy Lopez. For 2023, it's partially covered, but in 2024, as you said, yes, the 5 reductions is out of a different directive than the one that was given me. So this counts for Tricia's part of it, because that money would come off of her budget in 2023, and then it would remain off in 2024, satisfying for herself. For myself, or for the HR department and myself, though, I'm adding a additional position that I have to account for, plus still try to get to a $100,000 reduction.
Okay. We've discussed this. We have a proposal and a request before us. We heard about the health insurance woes tonight. We know we need more staffing in the HR area, and this certainly accomplishes that. Someone want to make a motion?
Oh, man.
Mr. Cooey.
I'll second.
And I have a second from Mr. Williamson. So, Mr. Langret, could you restate the motion, please?
Can, Mr. Chair, 1 second here, let me pull it up. Looking for a motion tonight to approve the Human Resources Director job description, approve creating a Human Resources Department, publish the ad for employment, and send to the County Board for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Gotchel, did you have a comment?
The cover sheet here still says grade Q. Do we want that in the resolution to be a P?
If you'd like, yeah, if we want to clarify that for P.
So we would change these.
Yep, I apologize.
When the resolution gets to the board, it's going to say
Oh,
P.
I'm not looking at the resolution. I'm looking at the cover sheet.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chair, doesn't there need to, this is a question for Clint, I think there needs to be a fund transfer as well. I think that's the role of the Finance Committee, to make fund transfers. Doesn't there need to be a fund transfer between HHS and administration?
We do. Is the numbers, Tricia, solid enough where you feel comfortable with the 57,893? Okay. I guess, yes, we are there. So thank you. We can do that all in the same resolution.
Well, are you offering that as an amendment?
Yeah, I'll make that a motion to amend to include a fund transfer between HHS and administration in the amount that Clint mentioned.
Thank you, Sean.
And I'll second that amendment. So we have the motion, and we have an amendment now specifying the amount to be transferred. So I'm going to ask for a voice vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, specify the amount to transfer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now we have the original motion with the amendment, establishing the position and advertising and all that stuff. So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the amended resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, and I think, well, the motion carries by voice vote. I can call for a roll. Perhaps I will. Please, Cheryl, if you would take roll on this, please.
Brewer,
Aye.
Williamson,
Aye.
Murphy Lopez,
No.
Hui, Manning, Gotchall,
Aye.
and Luck.
Aye.
Thank you. All
One
right.
opposed.
The motion carries. Thank you. Number 13, are we handling this separately, or is this part of that motion?
This is a little bit different. We'll have Director Clements come up and present on this one, Mr. Chair.
Tricia Clements, the Director of HHS, is at the mic.
Trish, your mic. It'll turn on if she hits the button.
What we are asking is to make changes to the staff authorization table. Right now, we have 2 psychiatric RN nurse positions. Those are both on a grade A, and we're asking that they be moved to a grade. We're asking, though, that we remove one of those positions and add a APS crisis worker, which would be a grade H. What is happening within the department with changes, staff changes, we're really looking at when someone leaves, trying to make sure that the person who's in the position matches the job description. So we had a psychiatric nurse that was doing crisis when we had one of our nurses leave. Our psychiatric nurse then went to that position, which left open our crisis position. We don't need 2 psychiatric nurses. What we need is 1 psychiatric RN and 1 crisis APS worker. So we're asking to remove 1 position from our authorization table and add the other one.
Okay. All right. Any questions while we have Trish?
What would be the
Or-
cost on that one way or the other?
It would be a savings. It's a grade low, it's a couple grades lower. So I would guess probably $5,000-6,000 a year.
I would make a motion.
You like that, huh, Mr. Manning? Manning makes the motion to.
Second.
Seconded by Williamson to approve the HHS request for a change in the pay grade. Step rating, I should say. All those in favor?
Just one quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Is this, thank you. Is this position, is it a long-term vacancy or is this recently vacated?
The crisis position is,
No, the, oh, let's see, you want to change the psychiatric RN from 2 to 1? Is the second psychiatric RN position, is that a long-term vacancy or a recent one?
that was a recent one. She left in the middle of February.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. Discussion and possible action on authorization table update.
So this one is kind of not knowing how that everything was going to play out is just changing then the authorization table for a human resources position and then moving the payroll and benefits specialist then to report underneath that position. And again, it would be put in as a P versus a Q at the present, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
So looking for approve the staff authorization table for the human resources position and creation of human resources department, health and human services staffing changes to present to the resolution to the county board for approval. So I'm sorry, the other part of it then will be striking then the position from Trish's department.
right. So basically codifying what we've just done. I need a motion, Mr. Cooey, seconded by Gatto. All those in favor of this change in the county code signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you. One no.
Takes us to to 15, Mr. Chair.
Sheriff Porter is approaching the mic to discuss, number 15, discussion of possible action on progression of wage schedule for sheriff's administrative assistant to step 8. And I'll ask Clay to.
So this
fill
is
us in.
this is following up on what we had discussed at the last meeting, and kind of bringing that back around. What I brought up at the last meeting is I have an employee, Susan Curtis. She has started her 32nd year of employment with the sheriff's office, and she's currently at a step 4 in the wage schedule. Step 8 being max or market value. She's at step 4. I'm asking for her to be moved to a step 8. We've done some back and forth dancing with Carlson Detman, trying to get her a grade increase because her job description isn't that far off from others in the county that are at a higher grade. But they've come back with, we need to review our how people are progressing through the pay plan. That was their last response. So one of the things that I really want to mention about this, and I think I hinted at it at the last meeting, is people at a step 4, that means if they leave and we replace them, their replacement is making as much as them after 1 year of employment. So Sue's replacement, let's say hypothetical Sue leaves, is making as much as Sue is after 32 years of employment in 1 year. So that's my request. We actually budgeted for a grade increase. There was some miscommunication at budget time, and we did budget for the grade increase. So the money's there. We can go all the way to step 8 and still not be using the funds we budgeted for.
Okay, thank you. So the request tonight, and is this the closed session or?
No, there's more.
There's more, okay. So what we're doing is changing from step 6, is it now, or?
Step 4 currently.
Step 4 and moving it to step 8. Committee, what's your pleasure?
I only got one question, is how many people in the step process are at step 8 that have been here for 10 plus years?
Hold on a second, Mark, there's something, who's?
Okay, well, the question for Mr. Cooey is, how many employees at the county
Function at one.
are in step 8 or ought to be in step 8? Or are we setting precedent here?
I think we do this every couple months, we bring somebody up, and I'm not against that. That's not the point I'm trying to make, but I think that there is a lot of people in this pay grade that have never moved up to where they're supposed to. That's the problem I have with it. Is I don't think we're trying to get everybody raises and everything, but if we look at the pay grades, a lot of them are still at the step 4 or 2 or whatever. And we're hiring people at the same grade that the other ones are already at. That's the only problem I have, but it's not that she doesn't deserve, that's not what I'm talking about here.
Yep.
I'm just saying that it's gonna, we keep doing this and then pretty soon the next department's in and the next department.
So Cheryl, Assistant Dahl has ran some data on looking at, she'll describe on how many employees they are and what years of services they are, to try to capture the same type of demographics as well as the costing for it. Go ahead, Cheryl.
So I did this because she's been here 30 years. So I did do a 30 years, which is your bottom square there. One person's already at step 8. That would bring 10 other people up one step. none would go up 2 steps, none would go up 3 steps, and 6 would go up 4 steps. That would be a total of 17 people for over 30 years. Would be approximate cost of $26,346.45. And that's for a year. I also did people at 20 years. It's the next box up, and then I have a 15-year calculation there.
And for sake of being your administrator and having my own financial troubles to try to work through as well, I guess, and for sake of having a counter argument, the other elements that we try to recognize longevity is through benefits accrual. You know, if you've been here for that many years, you probably do have access to 5 weeks of vacation. You have access also for payout of one of your weeks, which is not a lot. I mean, it's a small bonus on top of it. So there are some other types of elements in which we try to recognize our folks that have been here for longevity.
You know, the confusing part of this is why is one of them already at step 8 and the other ones aren't?
Thinking that's probably a grandfathered one that came across on the wage or on the transition to Carlson. Is that correct?
Well, there's more than one that's at step 8. I would think if you look through all of them, how many just sorted to step 8s? Is there only one in the whole? There's more.
Mark,
Yeah,
I think
this
that's
is-
because when they did the wage study, no one got a decrease in their pay. I wasn't around at the time, but that's what I've heard Janetta and others say.
I don't.
If you need more details on that, Tammy could probably describe the different ones that are exceptions that are out past.
How many of them have we moved up in the last year? How many of them want to step 8? That's what I thought.
Yeah, only at Pine Valley. Yeah.
So you're telling me she was at step 3 previous to this?
I don't think anybody got a step increase this year, at least not.
They got a percentage.
Pine Valley.
Pine Valley's the only one that got a step increase.
Ever since this wage study went in, it's been a mess.
Yes,
And it's not.
Absolutely.
It's not getting better. Like I said, I'm not against moving this to step 8, but I want to know how we're gonna get the other ones to where they belong. That's the question. And that's the $500,000 or whatever it's gonna take to do where they should be, right? I mean,
well, it wasn't 500,000, that was,
if you moved everybody where they should be, according to the step progressions that are drawn out for years of service, whatever the case may be, it's pretty pricey.
Yes, and we've had the conversation points too through budgets on, do we do step increases to make it to market value, knowing though that we're not doing our CPI or cost of living in price to the scale, and then are we really at market value and so on.
Mr. Chair,
the reality of I'll come right back to you, Melissa. The reality of the situation is we don't have the ability to generate more income to the county to match these increases. Yes, Ms. Luck.
I have 2 comments. One is, I agree with Mark. I hate to do these piecemeal. I would like to address this countywide. But my second question is, what is our financial plans say we were going to do about raises? Were we doing step increases or were we only doing percentages for the next 5 years? Because I think we agreed that we were going to stick to our financial plan. So I'd like to know what, if any, room there is to address this issue.
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. We have it calculated right now as a percentage increase, but that can either arrive as a percentage of a CPI increase costing the entire schedule, or each step is roughly about 2%. It can arrive at giving folks a step increase. The current plan, bear with me here. We'll open a spreadsheet here. And if you want to have other discussion points, I can pull up what our financial plan is currently tracking here.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I'd add while he's looking for that is that we've already not followed our financial plan this evening. we already added an HR director. And the more things I know I sound like a real drag here, but the more things we keep adding, the more challenging it's going to get at budget time each year, because you either have to raise taxes on the public, which we're already doing. You have to go beyond the 4%, or you have to make cuts elsewhere. There's just, or if shared revenue comes in, if we get that bump, like they're promising right now, we could use it for these things, but then we're already using it up. And so there's pushes in multiple places, for, Carrie wants more funding for the parks and for fair right now. Well, we got to prioritize, all these ideas coming in. If we just handle them one off and we don't look at the big picture, this is why I think we have such financial struggles at Richland County, because we don't look at the big picture.
Well, every county has these issues, Sean. We're not alone. And Miss Manning.
Yes, Clay, would this be an all or nothing, set up from 4 to 8, and somehow we could step her up some without that much? It doesn't seem fair somebody that long is where she's at. I certainly agree with Mark on that. But with the financial situation we're at and all the other people that's in that same problem, would it have to be all the way from 4 to 8, I guess is my question.
So I guess and Sue herself she understands the financial situation the county's in. We all do. I want to argue for an 8. I'm asking for an 8. If somebody feels there's something that's more appropriate, I guess we would be open to suggestions on that. One thing I want to reiterate, and kind of to Sean's point, about the 5-year financial plan, we've already budgeted for this, so it's already in the 5-year financial plan. Again, I'm one department asking for one person, and I get that there's a bigger problem here, and it goes back to our earlier conversation about retention and longevity and stuff like that. But this is already budgeted for. So I just want kind of to pound that home again, that it's part of the 5-year plan because it's already in the budget.
Thank you, Sheriff. The sheriff has laid it out for us. He's made a case. I think he's done a good job. And
just to follow up on
Administrative
the
language.
question where our financial plan is, we've currently got it costed at a 5% increase for 2023 for general wage increases, a 2024 of 5%, a 2025 of 4%, a 2026 of 3%, and a 2027 of 1.5%. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I would entertain a motion to do what the sheriff has asked. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair.
Was that Mr. Gotchel? Yes.
I feel very passionately about this topic, and I don't think that's a surprise. If we would come with a proposal to say any employee in the county that has 30 years of experience is moved to market value, I'd probably vote for that right now. I can't, in these tenuous times, our only barometer, as it's been explained to me, as I've lobbied for other departments to come forward for one-off situations, our barometer was Carlson Detman either changing the position description or recommending a different wage grade or something of that nature. It's kind of my understanding this would be unprecedented that we decided to move someone up the pay scale that they're currently in based on their longevity. And I just don't think I can do that for one person.
Then you should vote no. Okay, Any more discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Melissa.
I just want to add, like, I'm struggling because I think we need to address this countywide and not do one-off situation. It's not that I don't think that she deserves to be at step 8. I would like to see us address these issues broadly, and so that it's, I mean, we have other employees who are also are in the same situation. So I'd feel better if we came back with a plan of how we could achieve this for countywide.
Thank you. I'll call roll on this, and you go along with what the sheriff has presented. No,
Mr. Chair,
we won't.
could I make an amendment to it to raise her to a 6 rather than an 8? I think might at this time be more appropriate.
Well, what kind of dollars would that amount to, Clay?
I might ask Clint or Cheryl if they have a wage schedule in front of them, but I think it's, I think it's about around $1 each an hour. Does that sound right? Or not quite $1?
4. Okay. Did you say she's at a 4?
Yeah,
What grade? Like, what's her letter?
I could, so not,
Step 8.
so it's not even.
So step 8 would be
$2
$2 an hour more. Step 6 is $1 something.
Can we pull that chart up with the 30+ employees and the step they're at and the cost?
Anybody get a second?
It might be nice to also see the list of employees who have served more than 30 years who would not be getting a raise versus this one person.
Do we need that second, Tim, to continue to discuss?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we got a second on that amendment. Cooley seconds the amendment.
Cheryl, you didn't put that in our folder, right? The one you had pulled up?
It'll go there because it'll go for after the meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to make one other comment about raises in general. I've really been struggling with the idea of, some departments have the capacity to raise funds to give their employees more raises, like let's say ambulance or, and so I struggle with the concept of wanting to be fair across all employees, but then, we're also to the point where I guess anytime we have the ability to give a raise and it's not going to increase the tax levy, should we be doing that? In this situation, it is budgeted, but it's still tax dollars, and I guess Sheriff Porter, you did budget it for this year. So then when we were calculating out subsequent years of salaries, when we were looking at what could or could not be cut, I'm assuming you used her new salary rates for all of the subsequent years that were calculated. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just trying to verbalize what I'm really struggling with I want to be fair. And yet, some departments have the ability to raise funds in order to be able to give those raises. And should we not allow them to do that if they can, since we're so desperate for employees? So for the committee, I just wanted to verbalize where my thinking is right now.
No, thank you. All right, I'm gonna call for a voice vote on the amendment. And that's changing the request to step 6. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Were you going to vote, Mr. Murphy Lopez, or whoever's online left?
Yeah, I didn't hear you call for.
I did.
opposed.
I called for a vote on the amendment.
So I'm opposed to it. I didn't hear you say opposed.
I am as well. I think if we're going to do it, we should do 8. And if we're not going to do it, then we shouldn't do it.
I apologize, Mr. Murphy Lopez. I didn't ask for nays. I'm sorry. You're right. All right, the amendment carries. Oh, you didn't get to vote. Oh, all right. So where are we then? Amendment doesn't carry. All right. Then we're back to the original motion then, changing it to a step 8. Are we ready to vote on that? That's for a roll. Do we have a second to that amendment to the original motion?
Was someone just talking? Because we couldn't hear anything.
That was Mr. Cooey, and
So
Mr. Cooey's amendment is, I'm not sure this would be an amendment or a different motion, but that we do the remedy for all employees who have 30+ years, which will cost $26,346.
I'd second for discussion.
And that would include then, I would think, 2, right? Yes, all right. It's been seconded for discussion. Discuss.
So
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
I think, Mr. Chair, you made the comment, that all other counties are struggling with this too. I think what's different about Richland County is I think we don't think holistically. I don't think we look at everything we want like on a menu, and we don't prioritize enough. We hear these one-off cases, and this is a good case. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't think she deserves a raise either, but so does everybody else. And the question is, how do you pay for these things? And that's why we have the 5-year financial plan. And we went through all that work over that 8-month process with the referendum committee so that we could figure out how to pay for 5% increases across most of the coming years. And that's at expense to the taxpayers. And that's a good investment, I believe. But then where's this money going to come from? Where's the HR director money going to come from? The money's got to come from somewhere. And if we're not discussing that, and if we're just saying we're making we're making this big moral decision here about giving someone a raise who really deserves it, but we don't know where the money's coming from. That's the thing that I think is a little bit different about Richland County compared to other counties.
You.
But
Mr. Gotchell, you wanted to discuss, so.
my question would be, what's our mechanism for the folks hypothetically that are at 29 years and we come back to this situation next year, or are we not worried about that right now? So we're essentially saying any employee that has 30 years or more is paid at market value or step 8, but that will be outdated as soon as we take action tonight with folks that cross that threshold in the future.
Any comments, Administrator Langrick, to help us out here?
This will be another one to try to solve where the funds are coming for 2023. I don't know which all departments are impacted, and I doubt that they necessarily have it in their budgets. You would have the argument of, yes, what do you do with folks that are at 29 years, 28 years, etc.? Those are all valid points. We might be certainly helping out, recognizing one employee that has done an amazing job for a very long time, but just like our resolution honoring and recognizing folks of service with a resolution of just saying, hey, good job. This is also coming with a financial impact that could rub other folks the wrong way.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Sheriff Porter first, and then I'll come back to you, Melissa.
Okay,
Sheriff.
thank you.
I just, having a thought, thinking of this and listening to people's comments, I do want to say too, that, and not, at the risk of prolonging this discussion further, not all 30-year employees have probably been in their current position is another consideration, because I'm thinking to myself, your comment about who's at 29 years and what's this going to mean for them when they hit 30, because I have an employee another employee in that situation, but she's also only been in her current position for a couple of years. She's been with the department this entire time, but she's only been in that current position for a couple of years. So, that's, I guess, a little bit more complexity to that equation, is maybe not everybody who's been here for 30 years, maybe they've progressed through different jobs and don't have that experience in their current position. Whereas Sue's been, well, she did work as a jailer dispatcher for us for a while, but she's been in her current role for quite some time now, but most of her career.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when we look at the 30-plus years, changing them to market 8, I think I'd want to know how many of them have been in absolutely the same job for those 30 years.
Mr. Chair, I will add, I believe these 30 years were the general employees, because Pine Valley had already went up steps. So I think it's just the general employees in that Pine Valley.
So we have the amendment, which is almost a different, but it doesn't exist without the original motion. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Melissa, I'm
I did
sorry,
have-
I didn't get back.
Yeah, I would like to know what Mr. Langrich's recommendation is as to whether, if he feels that we should be doing this addressing one at a time, or if his recommendation would be to look at our 5-year financial plan and figure out a way that we could address this countywide.
I guess my initial on the first half of that question is, I appreciate what Sue does for the department. I appreciate what position Clay would be in if she stopped doing what she does so well in her department. But I would recommend against it. In the second aspect of it, of how we're going to fix it across the board, that comes down to the same type of conversation we had about a year ago at the same time on trying to entertain one-offs, and then we want to try to do things with wages. When we hit the budget process and we realize trying to do all those things for wages becomes a challenge, unless we're willing to reduce the number of seats. I'm in a situation tonight where as you just saw, I'm advocating to try to add another position with the idea of trying to cut or reduce the amount of what I'm adding on top of meeting that directive to stay in compliance with the financial plan. So these are the challenges that we're facing with it. If the mindset is we're going to do this and then, or we're not going to do it, but we're going to figure out how to fix it with the budget process, I'm all about that, but I would certainly remind you on the situation which I had many supervisors saying I set the county up to feel kind of squeamish and uncomfortable, and it was not a good move of me of trying to address those thoughts and bringing forward a more meet a CPI and meet a cost of living expectation with the budgets, of which I made a lot of folks have anxiety. My 21 bosses were not necessarily happy with me with that decision. So please keep those talking points in mind.
Well, thank you. I guess I'll call a roll call vote on the amendment. The amendment is basically to go down to table 3, or the third option there, for all 30-year employees at a cost of $26,346.45.
Okay, roll call for the amendment is Williamson,
No.
Murphy Lopez,
No.
Cooey, Manning,
No.
Gotcha,
Yes.
Luck,
No.
Brewer.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, let's get up to a vote then on the original motion. And I'll call roll on that then. This would be doing what the sheriff has asked us to do.
Mr. Chair, I have one question first.
Yes, Mr. Manning.
We have already done this several times, correct? I mean, we wouldn't be like setting a precedent.
Well, Mr. Langer, can you answer that?
We've done individual increases for positions, or we've done a couple different vacation accrual increases perhaps for people. So we have done it, and each time we do it, we do pay dearly for it with the one person that we're recognizing for the amazing jobs that they are doing. It puts us in a situation then where everybody that's not getting the same type of accolades and same type of monetary increase then feels like they're devalued and depreciated. Not everybody, but often a lot of them do.
I have a question. Carlson Detman turned down your request for a revision in grade. What prevents us from doing that?
Do you want me to go, Clint, or you?
Well, I'm asking either anyone.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's the same. It's probably the same argument that we're having now for the step increases, just a grade increases, that we're doing it for one person. You know, I mean, either way, like I said, I budgeted for the grade increase, and we didn't think that was a feasible ask, that we're going against Carlson Detman's recommendations. I felt that the step increase was more reasonable. So, you know, either way, I think it's a similar, you know, you're doing it for one person. What about the rest? So, I felt the step increase was more reasonable of an ask, considering we're keeping her at the same grade after a couple failed attempts with Carlson Detman. So,
Okay. I'm going to call a roll on this. We go along with the sheriff. No, you don't.
Okay, roll call for the original. Murphy Lopez,
No.
Cooey, Manning,
No.
Gotchel,
No.
Luck,
No.
Brewer,
Yes.
Williamson.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you. That takes us to closed session. Yeah.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. We're on item number 16.
So I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
This will be closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19851C, considering employment and promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility regarding sheriff's office personnel.
Mr. Manning makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Cooey seconds. All those in favor of going into closed session signify by saying aye.
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 I do have one request, and I don't know, maybe if I should have made this when we were still in open, but can I keep Chief Deputy Aaron Wallace in the closed session?
I have no objection. Does anyone else?
Is he still in the room, Barb?
Aaron is so.
Okay, we've been.
We're live here.
We're back. We're back. We're back in open session. I'll entertain a motion to do what we decided to do in closed session.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Cooey makes the motion to allow a 3-week vacation offer to the employee.
I'll second.
And second, returning employee. Right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. Future agenda items. Anything? I think one of them would be to pursue the COOI amendment, which was really a whole discussion unto itself. Clint? Looking at the remedy, the step 8 for all 30-year employees.
Cost
it, Mr.
find out where everybody belongs.
Yeah. That warrants further discussion. I mean, that's a topic unto itself.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this needs to be on the agenda, but I've been curious. A few years ago, we voted to give free care out to assignments for employees. I've never heard a number of how many employees are actually taking that up, or if it's been beneficial to the county.
Something we would want to add. We don't have an agenda necessarily to talk this evening.
We'll see that as an agenda item then next time.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Luck.
one of the concepts I've been thinking a lot about with our raises, et cetera, is, you know, the idea that we have to give everyone the same raise every year versus the idea that maybe you give a base raise of, let's say, 2%, but then you get it, you have a pot of money that you actually use to reward your really good employees, and department heads could go through some kind of process. So because I think that when you
A merit-based system.
yes, I think I'd like to talk about that at some future meetings.
That would probably come from the new HR director, but that's something to consider. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Manning. Second, Mr. Cooey. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose. We are adjourned. Thank you.